thorough analysis of the origin of species. Lesson 18. A sad story of the short-necked giraffe. In Chapter 7, Charles Darwin treats with miscellaneous objections to the theory of natural selection. Though the evolution is currently an established theory, there were a lot of objections to natural selection when his book was first published. The celebrated paleontologist Brown asked how a variety can live side by side with the parent species at the close of a German translation of his book. If both have become fitted for slightly different habits of life or conditions, they might live together, also insisting that distinct species never differ from each other in single characters but in many parts. He asked how it always comes that many parts of the organization should have been modified at the same time through natural selection. There is no necessity for supposing that all the parts of any being have been simultaneously modified. It's because this can be attributed partly to the principle of correlated growth and partly to so-called spontaneous variation that they would appear to us as if they had been simultaneously developed. A much more serious objection had been urged by Brown and Broca. It is an opinion that there are many characters that appear to be of no service to their possessors, and therefore they cannot have been influenced through natural selection. This subject had been discussed by Naegeli with respect to plants. He consequently believed in an innate tendency towards progressive and more perfect development. But in the first place, we ought to be extremely cautious in pretending to decide what structures now are or have formerly been of use to each species. In second place, when one part is modified, a certain cause of its effect on other part is a mystery of correlation. In the third place, we have to allow for the direct and definite action of changed conditions of life and for so-called spontaneous variations, in which the nature of the conditions apparently plays a quite subordinate part. Mr. Mivart brings forward two objections. One is that the increased size of the giraffe body would obviously require an increased supply of food, and he considers it as very problematical whether the disadvantages thence arising would not, in times of scarcity, more than counterbalance the advantages. The being able to reach to a supply of food left untouched by others would have been of some advantages to the nascent giraffe. Also, we must not overlook the fact that increased bulk would act as a protection against almost all beasts of prey and would serve as a watchtower. The preservation of each species can rarely be determined by any one advantage, but by the union of all, great and small. His second objection is as follows. If natural selection be so potent, and if high browsing be so great an advantage, why has not any other hoof-foot quadruped acquired a long neck and lofty stature, and why has not any member of the group acquired a long proboscis. In South Africa, the competition for browsing on the higher branches must be between giraffe and giraffe, and not with the other ungulate animals. It is as unreasonable to expect a distinct answer to such a question as why some event in the history of mankind did not in one country, whilst it did in another. In order that an animal should acquire some structure specially and largely developed, it is almost indispensable that several other parts should be modified and co-adapted. Although every part of the body varies slightly, it does not follow that the necessary parts should always vary in the right direction and to the right degree. Lastly, natural selection is a slow process, and the same favorable condition must long endure in order that any marked effect should thus be produced. The expression long endure represents geological time. It cannot be denied that the abrupt and great changes of structure are widely different from gradual changes which most species apparently have undergone. If some ancient form was transformed suddenly through an internal force or other tendency, one will be almost compelled to verify that many individuals varied simultaneously. He will be compelled to believe that many structures beautifully adapted to all the other parts of the same creature and to the surrounding conditions have been suddenly produced, and of such complex and wonderful co-adaptation he will not be able to assign a shadow of an explanation. To admit all this is to leave the realms of science and to enter into those of miracle. In this lecture, objections by only Brown and Mivart were discussed. In case you want a full detail, you'd better refer to reference 1, chapter 7 of the Origin of Species. See you next. Shalom.